Welcome, everyone, and thank you for joining us on today's webinar about a novel and often overlooked aspect of R&D productivity that's particularly important at this time of scarce resources. The pressure on resource has been felt industry-wide, but nowhere is it more acute than in emerging biotech. That's why the title of today's webinar is Big Dreams and Small Teams. If you are working in emerging biotech, then today's webinar is aimed at providing you with a formula that could boost R&D productivity by 3, 5, or even more %. With the help of today's special guest, the goal is to provide you with some practical advice and encouragement. But before we get started, I'd like to take a moment to set out the context and in particular why we believe emerging biotech is so important. Arguably, emerging biotech is one of the most exciting frontiers of scientific innovation. Yet, its significance is easy to overlook. Big tech, for example, has its origin stories. The garages and sheds from which today's leading technologies emerged. By contrast, little is said about the small labs, shared incubators, and late-night experiments from which biotech breakthroughs emerge and patient needs and suffering are addressed. Biopharma produces life-saving and life-improving medicines, but as AI market activity and valuations show, it's the tech sector that really banks the cash. Today, the market valuations of just one AI player, NVIDIA, exceeds the valuation of the big pharma top 10. Extraordinary. Yet, there are so many biotech field of dream stories, small teams with big dreams and a determination to make it happen, often against the odds, both scientific and commercial. There's no denying that early stage biotech is tough. Founders must juggle science, strategy, and fundraising with limited people and resources. Yet, this is what they do every day, and it's inspirational. Before we meet our special guests, let's take a moment to set out the science behind today's webinar. It's contained in Super Projects, our research into the factors that make some new product development and other big projects in Pharma Super. Research focuses in particular on a novel aspect of R&D productivity called R&D-P, or the people-related aspects of R&D. In this context, we're going to focus on a formula called the 9 rights for a product development or asset team. Those 9 rights are all the right people, in the right roles, doing the right work, and working together in the right way, with the right resources and the right rewards to achieve the right results. Also, that the work's being done in the right place and at the right time. You can think of this as the Swiss Army knife of R&D productivity because it can be used anytime, any place by R&D project leaders and their teams in order to get more work done and to make life a little bit easier for themselves in the process. So, let's jump straight in. I'm delighted to have Thanos Tsagkadouras from Galino Labs today with us on the webinar to talk through some of the teams that he's worked with and some of the practical challenges that they face. Thanks very much for joining us, Thanos.
Pleasure is all mine. Thank you for having me.
We're starting off with the very top of the framework, but having all the right people in the right roles. Tell me about that in terms of what you see in the organization that you deal with and that you talk to.
The thing is that when you're like early stage, it's quite tough to find all the right people from the beginning, especially let's say when you're very early stage and you're 2 co-founders together or you have another 2 members joining the team. There is a hesitancy, reluctancy to bring new people fast, which for me makes complete sense because when you start initially, you have a cohesive team, even if it's just 2 people that they want to build the foundation of the company and the proof of concept of what they're trying to work on. If you bring new people too fast, then you may have to manage or have to spend more time trying to motivate these people than doing the real work yourself.
Yeah, the challenge being for organizations at an early stage is to fill all the roles, both the scientific and the commercial type of roles.
That's because mainly in the beginning, you wear many hats, and as you go through this process, you need to do the research for the product development, the research for the commercialization part, and also if most of them that I've spoken to, they have scientific backgrounds. You need to also do the science and build standard procedures in the lab, how to do the experiments correctly, bioassays and all the rest. So initially, it makes sense to do many things at the same time. And of course, you need to handle them as efficiently as possible, time and money-wise at the same time, when the funding is lacking.
And it's very difficult to be that scientific genius in the lab and also be the one who courts investors and develops the strategy and talks to potential partners and all that type of other work.
Yeah, it's very tough. Most of the times, that's because the ones who are more science-driven, who love this, but they're very, you could say, they're very geeky. I was like this too, or I am like this, but now in a different kind of setting. You're being pretty much isolated, loving your project, treating it, as your baby that you want to be commercialized and have a real application in the world. But that does not translate into also having the commercialization and business acumen to execute at the same time.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So doing the right work and working together in the right way, both of those have got ambers there saying that's not always the case within these smaller organizations.
That's because doing the right work in the right way, when you're at early stage, and because you have to do many things at the same time, always there are gaps that you try to fill in your processes. And this is how decisions have to be made along the way.
Because I see that the one that's calling out for it there is the right resources, which everything else, of course, dependent upon, is securing the resources to get you through this stage and to the beginning of the next stage to get you to be able to access more funding.
Well, especially with the market situation, it's a pretty tough situation. The resources are very short, and companies try to find creative ways to move during these turbulent times into the development part of their company and the products. The thing that occurs when there are this kind of resource restricting times, companies find novel ways to save money. But initially, it's very tough to have the right resources. So it may push you to find new, novel, innovative ways to do things.
And of course, it means that you're spending more time chasing resources and trying to secure resources rather than in the lab doing the work, progressing that side of the business. There's two greens. Great to see some green up there. We got right rewards and to achieve the right results. Both of those are green, so solid there. Tell me about that.
Ideally, the right rewards, at least in early stages, is the mental strength that you get out of every milestone that you put into your plan, like your business plan, through the course of time that you're building your company. Even if you reach out to potential investors during the day, or you find, for example, success in a particular experiments that you're having initially to prove your drug that it works or that it might work, all this together and having the right results, it means that this will give you the mental boost to continue and doing what you're doing under this resource constraint times that the market has right now. That's how I believe it all tied together, the right rewards and the right results.
I think the right result is more focused now in terms of the next milestone, the next deliverable, the next access to funding, that we're more narrowly focused today in this resource constrained environment, would you say?
Yeah, it's just you have just enough capital to move into the next phase of your development as a company. And that's about enough if you have the drive to execute and have the results that you need to move on. Keep you motivated. That's the most important part.
I see you've got a mix of colors down at the end saying right place and right time. We're saying it's not the best time in the industry at the moment, and maybe that's why you've got it right there. A right place, you got a neutral.
Yeah, well, the right place, of course, you might be in a country or a place that has the potential to give you more opportunities. That's where I think the innovation edge comes where capital is very restricted, and then you can make the place as right as possible by what you have available. And this is about having a very well, let's say, tied team together and super motivated to continue doing the right work, if possible, from start to finish. And for me, it's all about execution. That's why I'm showing. Let's say you have a novel idea that you want to build and work on, and you should never just rely on when it will be the right time for the market to just accept your idea. That's why we see many kind of funding stories that come from out of the blue with companies that have amazing ideas that they manage even to get enough capital to move on with their projects. So the right time becomes the right time when you start doing the things that you were supposed to do.
Yeah. So we were to zoom back out from that kind of analysis you've done there, and then we've got 9 factors, 9 rights, and if I count them, you got 4 of them are neutral. You got 2 greens out of 9. I guess this emphasizes the complexity of what these brave and heroic and courageous innovators are doing in their labs and in their commercialization efforts. This is complex. This is challenging, is what that analysis is saying to me.
Yeah, it's very complex. That's because it's very intricate to find the mental capacity during this whole process, especially if you're a small team, let's say you're a founder and co-founder together, to have all these 9 being at the green, okay? And that makes it complex. And along this process, if you want to make it more successful, in my perspective, you need to be granular in your approach, one of them, and see what we have now. Let's say, who are with what are right people? Right people. I mean, at early stage, it's very difficult, but let's say in every particular stage, let's say in early stage, we are who we are right now. What do we do? And try to make this work together. It's difficult because human beings are very divergent in their way of thinking. That's why sometimes I say one thing and then you realize another thing. This creates some barriers in communications, experience too. And this can get even more enhanced when you have like very culturally diverse teams.
So what advice or what words of consolation or encouragement would you offer to these brave and heroic individuals who are at the early stages of creating tomorrow's drugs?
My biggest advice would be to keep being motivated, never settle up for less, as I say. And the most important thing is like have a flexible execution plan of what you need to do, like outreach for investors, for example, or the experiment you have to do, or analyzing what your numbers will be for the commercialization part and future projections for revenue. If you have all these pieces together as much as possible, this sets you apart from many other companies that are there that don't really think about piecing them all together. That's because most of them, because they're being founded by pure scientists, they focus only on the science part and then they omit these important pieces together. So execute, stay motivated, and do every day something that can keep you mentally feeling rewarded for what you're doing.
Sometimes the language of the commercialization, the strategy can sound intimidating and scary to scientists. It sounds like buzzword and lingo and so on. But I get somebody like you who's been in the lab and has moved successfully out of the lab into the executive suite, into the strategy sphere, can make that journey easier. If you can master the science, you can master the strategy with encouragement and support. It's not as difficult as it may seem. Don't be scared of it. Would that be something you say to people as well?
Yeah, I would say don't be scared of it at all. Now we have all the right tools out there to creatively decide, at least in the initial stages, set a foundation plan for how you can tackle the business and commercial aspect of your project. With that in mind, I would advise try to find your numbers as early as possible, your addressable market, or what your commercialization strategy could be along the development phase, and try to see if there are any changes that you need to do. That's because things are changing so fast from the regulatory aspect also to the market aspect of what you could expect future-wise in terms of revenue. And be pragmatic and realistic. This also will be respected. It's not something that should make you feel stressed about, but just has to be done in a way that it will be effective for what you expect in the future, but in the near future, of course, to achieve your next milestone.
Very grateful to Thanos for sharing his perspective on productivity and ways of working in early stage biotech. But how unique are these opportunities and challenges? To find that, let's use our big pharma benchmarking data from super projects. On the screen, I have Thanos' analysis of emerging biotech. Here we will see the greens in particular. You might be expecting big pharma to have a lot more greens given the level of resources, etc. However, our benchmarking data shows just 3 greens: right people, right roles, and right results. Let's do a color check on reds. It's not an exact comparison, but we see Thanos rated 3 of the factors red, while our benchmarking data points to 6 factors that could be rated red for big pharma. Those include working together in the right way, the right rewards, and the right resources. As the full array of colours suggests, the complexity of R&D-P productivity can be seen in both emerging biotech and big pharma. Interestingly, we see that the average score for R&D-P is 65 across the factors. However, for me, more interesting is the analysis of potential. The average potential to boost productivity in R&D-P is 35% across these factors. That amounts to several hours per week for the members of any product development or asset team. Given the pressure that people are under to get stuff done, that has to be a big prize and one well worth going after. Would you like to apply this analysis to your organization and its R&D teams? You can access our free R&D-P calculator online or contact us